There is a word in this passage that Peter will not say. Jesus says it twice, and both times Peter hears it, understands exactly what it means, and refuses to hand it back. The third time Jesus opens his mouth, the word he uses is no longer his own. He reaches across the fire and takes the word Peter has been offering all along. Most readers move past this because they have been told the two Greek words are synonyms, that the gospel writer simply shifts vocabulary for stylistic variety, that nothing is at stake in the difference. But the text itself says otherwise. It tells us with devastating precision that Peter was grieved because Jesus asked a third time. Grief is not a response to stylistic variety. Grief is a response to being understood. The question is why Peter would rather be grieved than lie about the kind of love he has. The customary explanation of agapaō and Filio has flattened this scene for generations. Agape, the standard account goes, is unconditional divine love, the love of the will, the love that seeks the good of another. Filio is warm affection, brotherly friendship, the love of shared experience and comfort. And so the scene becomes a gentle ladder. Jesus asks for the highest love. Peter can only offer the lower love. Jesus finally accepts the lower love. That reading is not entirely false, but it is far too neat. It misses what John has been doing with these words throughout the entire gospel. In the Gospel of John, agapaō is never a warm feeling. It is the love that Jesus commands when he says, "If you love me, keep my commandments." It is the love that Jesus describes when he says, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends." It is the love that binds the Son to the Father in an obedience that does not flinch. It is, above all, the love that Peter explicitly claimed before he collapsed. On the night of the Last Supper, Peter announced that he would lay down his life for Jesus. Jesus answered with a question that sounds almost haunting in hindsight. "Will you lay down your life for me?" And then he told Peter that the rooster would not sing until Peter had denied him 3 times. Peter heard the claim, heard the standard, and made the claim anyway. He used the word with his chest. He meant it. And then he failed it in the most public and humiliating way possible. Now the same disciple is sitting across the same kind of fire, and Jesus is using the same word. When Jesus asks, "Do you agapaō me?" he is not asking Peter to describe his feelings. He is asking Peter whether he is prepared to say again that he will lay down his life. He is asking whether Peter will re-enter the claim that collapsed. And Peter will not do it. That refusal is the hinge of the entire passage, and it deserves more than the footnote it usually receives. Peter does not say no. He does not say he does not love Jesus. He says, "You know that I phileō you." He offers the word that means the love of a heart that has been broken, the affection of a friend who knows what he cost, the loyalty of someone who doesn't trust his own courage anymore. He offers the only word he can speak without the taste of his own failure rising in his mouth. But there is a problem with this reading that the text itself creates, and the text does not resolve it quickly. If Peter is being honest about his limits, why does the third question devastate him? And why does Jesus, who has used the same elevated word twice, suddenly abandon it and speak in Peter's language? Those two questions are the same question, and they will not answer themselves. The physical world of the scene is doing work that the Greek cannot do alone. John includes a detail that would have stopped a first reader cold. The Greek word for the charcoal fire that Jesus has built on the shore is anthrakia. It appears exactly twice in the entire New Testament, both times in the Gospel of John, both times in scenes involving Peter. The first time is in John 18, in the courtyard of the high priest, the night of the betrayal. Peter is standing with the servants and the officers, warming himself at an anthrakia, and it is there that he says 3 times that he does not know Jesus. The cold of that night, the glow of the coals, the faces of the people pressed around him, all of it is sealed into that single rare word. Now, resurrection morning, Peter swims to shore and sees the other anthrakia Jesus has already prepared. The same word, the same smell of smoke in the clothes, the same low heat on the skin. John does not say that Peter recognized the parallel. He does not need to. The word itself is a deliberate echo that drags Peter back to the exact moment his courage failed. The fire of his restoration is built on the ashes of his denial, and the reader who knows only a fire is missing the point. The reader who knows what an anthrakia smells like in the dark who knows the specific shame of standing in the wrong company at the wrong hour, is standing with Peter in that scene. Peter steps out of the boat and into the place of his worst memory. Jesus has been there waiting for him. Most people have a charcoal fire, not the literal one, but the place they would rather not revisit. The phone call, the argument, the silence, the decision that still burns when it comes back in a dream. The instinct is to avoid those places, to swim away from them rather than toward the shore where they wait. The passage does not ask you to forget the fire. It does not pretend the fire never happened. It walks you back to it and tells you that the Lord is already standing beside it, cooking a meal, waiting for you to come close enough to hear the question you have been dreading. When Jesus asks the first question, Peter must feel the weight of the word. Agape in John's Gospel is not a ladder of perfection. It is a claim of total obedience, and Peter has already made it and seen it collapse. So he answers with Filio, and the answer is not a demotion of his love. It is an admission of the truth about himself. I am not the man who said he would die for you. I am the man who said it and ran. What I have left is the love of someone who knows he failed you and still calls you Lord. Jesus asks again with the same heavy word. Peter does not hesitate. He gives the same answer. This is not stubbornness or a word game. It is the first accurate self-assessment Peter has made in the entire gospel. On the night before the crucifixion, Peter spoke beyond himself. He announced a devotion he did not yet possess and heard Jesus answer him with the truth. In this scene, Peter will not make that mistake again. He will not claim a courage he has not earned. He will say only what he can verify by the memory of his own failure. That honesty is the thing that has been missing in Peter all along. His denial was not the only lie. The boast in the upper room had been a lie, already a lie told in good faith, but a lie nonetheless. He said he loved Jesus more than the others. He said he would never fall away. He promised a strength that did not exist yet. The courtyard turned it all to ash. So when he sits across the fire and says only Filio, he is not failing the exam. He is learning for the first time to answer a question about himself without inflating the answer. Most believers never learn this. They keep speaking in agape, declaring total surrender, absolute trust, unshakable faith, while living with a private record of disappointments they are afraid to confess. Peter is finished with that performance. The life of the disciple after this moment will be built not on claiming the highest love, but on telling the truth about the love he has and letting Jesus transform it. And then the third question comes. Jesus looks at Peter and says, "Do you Filio me?" He takes Peter's word. The moment is staggering because it is not a surrender of the standard, it is an acceptance of the man. Jesus will not drag Peter up to a level he cannot honestly speak. He comes down to the level Peter can speak in truth, and he asks the question in that language. But Peter is grieved. He is grieved because the number has reached 3. 3 questions against 3 denials. He understands what is happening. He is not being asked to say the same thing again. He is being walked, one count at a time, through the full measure of his failure, so that every act of denial is undone by an act of confession. The first question answered his first denial. The second question answered his second denial. The third question answers the third denial. And Jesus makes that third question land in Peter's own vocabulary, so that when Peter says Filio one more time, he is not parroting a word that still feels like a costume. He is answering from the only place he has left. Jesus has found him there. The deeper point is that Jesus does not wait for Peter to become the kind of person who can speak the higher love. He commissions Peter with the love he actually has. And that is perhaps the most freeing word in the entire passage. The work of feeding sheep and tending lambs is not a sign to the disciple who can claim everything. It is a sign to the disciple who has stopped pretending and has told the truth about the size of his own heart. Jesus will do the rest. He will grow Peter's love, stretch it, shape it into the love that finally does lay down his life, but not before Peter has admitted that he cannot do it yet. The movement is not from weakness to strength. It is from pretense to truth, and God calls the truthful heart sufficient for the work he gives it. That is good news for every believer who has stopped saying the brave words because they know they cannot keep them. The one who asks does not require you to claim a love you cannot bear. He only requires the love you have, offered honestly, and the willingness to be put to work where you are. Peter responds by appealing to what Jesus knows. Lord, you know all things, you know that I love you. He is not just saying that Jesus can see into his heart. He is saying that Jesus knows the whole record, the boast, the denial, the fire, the shame, and that even with all of it visible, the love Peter has is still real. The appeal is desperate and true. Jesus accepts it, but he does not let Peter rest in a comfortable ending. Immediately after the third exchange, Jesus speaks of the future. He tells Peter that in his youth he dressed himself and went where he wished, but in his old age another will dress him and carry him where he does not want to go. John explains the plain meaning. This was how Peter would die, stretched out on a cross, glorifying God in the same death he once feared. The restoration is not the end. It never was. The fire on the shore is a beginning. Peter is not being given his old life back, he is being handed a new one, and the new one ends on another cross. The question that hangs in the air after the scene closes is whether Peter can hear that prediction and still keep his word, whether any disciple can. The prediction is still settling over Peter when Jesus says the two words that began everything, "Follow me." The same imperative John recorded when Jesus first found him by the sea, before any of the miracles, before the confession, before the denial, before the fire. The call was never canceled. It was buried under years of failure and a night of public collapse, but it did not cease. The resurrected Lord does not issue a new call, a fresh program, a second chance that starts from zero. He repeats the original one, as if to say the entire time between did not disqualify Peter so much as it prepared him to hear what he could not hear when he was strong. The command carries in it the resolution of the grief Peter felt at the third question. Jesus took Peter's word for love because he was meeting Peter exactly where the truth was. And now he gives a command Peter can obey even in his weakness. He does not ask Peter to feel brave. He does not ask Peter to promise another great sacrifice. He asks Peter to walk. In this gospel, the verb behind follow me is agapaō, and it never means a purely inner devotion in John. It means feet moving behind someone. When the crowds followed Jesus, it was because they had seen signs and wanted bread. When the disciples followed, it was because they had found the Messiah and had nowhere else to go. When Peter followed on the night of the arrest, John says he followed at a distance, and that distance was the shape of his failure. Following at a distance is still following, but it is the form of following that protects the follower. It keeps enough space to run. Jesus walked into the high priest's courtyard, and Peter followed at a distance. When the distance closed in, Peter denied. Now, after the restoration, Jesus says the same word with no qualification. Not at a distance. Not after you are ready. Not when the love feels strong enough. Just follow. The command calibrates the life of discipleship, not by feeling but by location. Peter's love is imperfect and he has admitted it, but he can still place his feet behind Jesus. He can be close enough to hear the next command. He can let the one who knows all things set the direction. The difficulty of that command becomes the next problem in the text. Peter looks and sees the beloved disciple walking behind them, the one who had leaned against Jesus at the Last Supper, the one who stood at the cross while Peter was hiding, the one who reached the empty tomb first. Peter asks, "Lord, what about this man?" The question seems casual, almost conversational, but its placement after the prediction of Peter's martyrdom gives it a sharper edge. Jesus has just told Peter that another will dress him and carry him where he does not want to go. Peter has just learned that his following ends on a cross. And there, in the same breath, is a disciple who does not appear to have the same end in view. The comparison is immediate and human. If my calling is death, what about his? Why does his road look different? Why does his path seem to be one of remaining, while mine is one of leaving? The question sits in the text, and most readers treat it as a curiosity about the beloved disciple's fate. It is not a curiosity. It is the test that comes right after the restoration, and it will find every believer at some point. Jesus answers with a sentence that has none of the gentleness of the lakeside conversation. If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. The sharpness is deliberate. The second clause strips Peter of the right to measure his calling against another man's life. The word remain is the verb meno, the same word John uses throughout the gospel for abiding. The Father abides in the Son abides in the believer abides in love. The beloved disciple's whole posture is abiding, staying close to the breast of Jesus, remaining in the place of intimacy. Peter's posture is not abiding, it is following. The two callings are not in competition, and neither is superior. But Peter cannot see his own calling clearly while he is staring at someone else's. The question, "What about him?" is the most common way a disciple evades the cost of his own path. It is possible to say yes to Jesus and immediately feel the yes dissolve into resentment at the shape of someone else's life. The church is full of people who have never dealt with their own denial because they are too busy auditing the calling of the person next to them. Jesus closes the audit. The only answer to a sideways glance is not information about the other disciple. It is a reorientation to the command, "You follow me." Peter's question does not receive a promise about his friend's death. The text itself records that a rumor spread among the believers that the beloved disciple would not die. And John corrects the rumor by repeating Jesus' exact condition: "If it is my will that he remain until I come." The correction matters because it prevents the church from building a doctrine on a comparison. The beloved disciple was not promised exemption from death. He was simply placed under the Lord's will, just as Peter was placed under the Lord's command. One disciple receives a calling that looks like standing, and the other receives a calling that looks like walking into death, and both are entirely determined by the will of Jesus. The condition is not a formula for predicting who lives and who dies. It is a declaration that every road, long or short, safe or dangerous, is decided by the same sovereign love. What is that to you? The question frees Peter from the burden of needing to know the plan for everyone. It frees every disciple from the exhausting work of measuring grace by comparison. There is no such thing as a calling that has not been assigned by the one who knows all things. And then the gospel ends, not with a heroic portrait of Peter, not with a settled church, not with a concluding summary of all that has happened, but with the same two words still ringing: "Follow me." John says that there are many other things Jesus did, too many to write in a book, and then the gospel closes. The ending is deliberately unfinished because the following is ongoing. The narrative does not stop with Peter restored, as if restoration were the final destination. It stops with Peter in motion, walking behind the resurrected Lord, with a cross-shaped future waiting ahead of him. The same thing is being asked of the reader. Not to admire Peter, not to diagnose him, not to compare his calling to yours, but to place your feet behind the one who called you. The restoration was never an ending. It was the reissue of a command that had been there from the beginning, waiting for the disciple to be honest enough to receive it. Peter's love was no longer the love of a man who believed in his own strength. It was the love of a man who said, "Lord, you know all things," meaning you know I failed, you know I was afraid, you know I stood at the fire and lied, and still you know I love you. That kind of love is not impressive. It does not boast. It cannot. It is the love of someone who has been found out and forgiven, and therefore has nothing left to protect. It is precisely the love Jesus can use to feed lambs and tend sheep and shepherd the flock, because it does not need to prove itself. The church that Peter feeds will not be fed by a man who claims to love more than everyone else. It will be fed by a man who knows exactly how little his love had been and how much Christ's love covered it. That is the only kind of heart that can shepherd without crushing the sheep. The one who recognizes his own failure can bear with the failures of others. The one who was not allowed to keep a distance anymore will draw the flock close. So the passage leaves no comfortable distance for the disciple who reads it. The fire is still burning. The question is still being asked, not because Jesus needs an answer, but because the disciple needs to hear the shape of his own confession. The command is still being given. And the final weight of the text is not a promise that Peter's road will be safe, nor an explanation of why another disciple's road looks different. It is the unbearable and freeing truth that the one who knows all things still says follow, and that the following begins again in the exact place where the last failure ended. Not after the courage comes back, not after the love grows strong, not after the calling makes sense. Now in the smoke of the fire, with the rooster's cry still echoing in memory, "You follow me."